2, 1, go.
Yeah, so there is a bit of delay between the commentators and the runners, so we're going to be just slightly behind the runner during this commentary.
I'm not gonna spoil you guys though, it's all good.
And so right off the bat, Twilight Princess 90% starts off pretty good. We're going to be clipping through a gate right here using this rock that Adi's going to pick up and walk it over. And then we're going to be performing a pretty complex glitch known as Back in Time, but I believe Adi's going to be doing a safety save first.
So yeah, one thing about this gate clip is that it's a bit of a precise trick, and sometimes you just don't clip. You just kind of go back onto the side that you came in from. It really all just depends on your control stick angle.
Okay, so he's using the safe setup on the side of the bridge.
That took a while.
Yeah, so basically what just happened is Adi essentially voided out and respawned in the same area on the same frame while resetting the game. And when that happens, you actually sort of reset yourself onto the title screen. And so now we've saved on the title screen, which has some special properties that we're going to be carrying over to File 1. And so the default save location is just kind of in Farron Woods right here. And we're going to be going to get the lantern next. We also have the Orden Sword and Hylian Shields, which are useful right now for going to save Talo from the monkeys. And this also allows us to skip the first 2 days of Orden completely. Also, you'll notice the game is being played in the German language because that's the fastest language you can run this game in.
So if you couldn't tell at this point, the fastest method of movement, at least as human in this game, is rolling. You'll see Adi pretty much be doing this any time that he's as human. He's just going to be rolling around everywhere. But rolling is kind of annoying in this game, because anytime there is like a change in the slope of the ground, it kind of changes Link's direction a little bit. It doesn't affect it as much if you keep doing frame-perfect rolls, if I remember right. And it's kind of difficult to move at like a really fast speed all the time.
Yeah, the slope of the ground that Link rolls over kind of determines what speed he has, and if you're able to chain frame-perfect rolls together, you'll actually get more speed, so it's not about just rolling in a straight line, it's about making sure that you chain your rolls properly and that you try to sort of avoid going over like really tiny slopes in the ground.
People always ask, what's the hardest movement, or what's the hardest trick in the game? And most people will probably expect to say like Gorge Roll, Rupee Roll, all this kinds of stuff that's gonna come later, but it's actually rolling. Rolling this game is really tough to the point that you can lose up to you can lose seconds in the very first minutes of the game just by having bad rolls. So the greatest difference between a really good runner and someone that's just starting off is actually on how well his rolls are, because that's where most time loss is actually coming from. Movement-wise.
It is kind of staggering, just like how much time you can lose to rolling. And also like how much time you would save in rolling if you like did a task of this game. Anyway, we got some easy enemies in a cage to break. So one technique that Adi used right there was a technique known as jump/quick spinning. Basically, if you do a jump attack and then circle the control stick while you're in the air, Link will automatically go into a quick spin when he touches the ground. And it can be used to chain damage onto certain enemies. And in this instance, it helps break the cage faster.
So now comes everybody's favorite part of the run.
No.
Hey.
Mm, it's technically only video, so.
Alright, well here we've got goats. Goats is definitely one of the most annoying parts of the run. Basically, yeah, like, so, as you saw there, a goat kind of just, like, ran right in front of the exit. That can happen. It happens a lot, actually. Ooh, and you even got a brake slide out of that. Nice. But yeah, goats really, like, a consistent time usually is probably around, like, 20 seconds or something, or that's like the best time that you kind of hope to aim for. But honestly, just getting bad luck can sometimes get you above 30 seconds or even worse, so yeah.
Thankfully, you only have to do goats once, though.
Not like 100%.
And now we get to one of the more RNG sections of the run, which is wrestling with bow. Normally you're not supposed to be able to do this yet, but because of saving over the title screen file that we went to earlier, the flag that sets up the iron boots to like be obtainable is set, and so we can just get the iron boots right now.
Yeah, like the game the title screen file sort of has like a bit of a state in the plot of the game that it's in. It's sort of like right after you've tamed Epona and you're supposed to come back to Orden and get the iron boots, and so it just kind of lets you come into here and talk to Bo and get the iron boots out of him.
And so wrestling with Bo is kind of like a game of rock, paper, scissors. There are 3 different moves. Each one is weak to one move and strong against another. And so right here, Adi got good RNG. He was able to slap Bo and then push him out of the ring as fast as possible. During the first round, Bo can do either a grab, push, or a sidestep. Or sorry, a grab, a slap, or a sidestep. And sometimes he just does nothing during the first round, which is good. Although that doesn't happen in the second round, so Adi has to get lucky and get a sidestep for the slap to work. Otherwise, Bo is gonna keep on like pushing him away.
So another thing to note about this fight is that the faster you mash the A button, the faster you're going to push Bo off. So basically, yeah, you got to try and mash it as fast as possible. And if you mash anywhere between, I think it's like 12.5 or something to 15 button presses a second, you can push him off in one go if you grab him or if you slap him first right away. Unfortunately, for the second round, Adi didn't get very good luck, so that wasn't possible to happen, but you saw that in the first round.
Yeah, so most of the reason that we get the iron boots right now is just because it's simply convenient. Like, they're just right there, and we need them to complete the game. Anyway, now Adi's going to be saving over to file 2 right now, because we're going to need to use the properties of where we are right now to do a glitch later.
So at this point, Adi's just going to be kind of progressing the plot as normal. There isn't really anything we can do to avoid that, so yeah, he's just going to be crawling through this crawl space, going into the cutscene, and then getting into the castle sewers. Please tell me you're going for a box breaker. Nice. Okay. Nice. So yeah, that was box breaker. Where basically when you're still chained to the ground there, you can do a series of attacks at a certain time, and you can just barely get enough distance to break it while you're still attached. And it only works actually right as the cutscene's fading out, I think. or not the cutscene, the actual gameplay is fading out.
Yeah, it saves like 3 frames.
Yeah, if done optimally.
It doesn't waste time to go for it, so...
Exactly.
Yeah, but now we're in the main sewer. This is basically like the tutorial section of the game for Wolf Link, where Midna teaches you how to use all the abilities you have.
This is also a good time to talk about a bit of a tech that Audie's going to be using as Wolf a lot, and that is called dash canceling. So basically, as soon as Wolf Link starts, as soon as you press A to do a dash as Wolf Link, he has this bit of a starting animation, and if that animation is interrupted by any sort of action, either getting hit or climbing up a ledge or doing a B attack or something, it forgets to set the value that says you can't do another dash, and so whenever you finish that animation, you can dash right again. So basically, like if you can, or you'll see Audie do this a lot during the run, where he'll like jump off start a dash off a ledge, and then he'll be able to do another dash right away.
Yeah, or do a dash and then a B attack, for instance.
Or that, yeah.
Because usually after you dash, you have to wait about 2 seconds before you can dash again, but if you're able to cancel the dash within a certain amount of frames, you can do a dash again without having to wait for the cooldown.
Okay, so this that Midna text that was right there, it is possible to skip that if you jump at the right angle. It is kind of a bit of a risky trick to go for, because if you miss it, sometimes you'll still miss the trigger for activating the Midna jump attack thing. So sometimes it'll waste more time than it actually would save, but it skips the little Midna text, so it saves like a second or two.
Yeah, so you notice that before some of these Midna jumps, Midna will speak very briefly, and during those jumps it's possible to do what are known as just like one-framers. Audie just got one right there. Basically, if there's text that Midna has before the jump, you have 1 frame right before the jump, or you have 1 frame after her text where you can jump early instead of having to wait for like 2 seconds before you can jump again.
Yeah, there's one exception to that rule, but...
Yeah. And now we're going to save over file 3 right here so that we can actually do back in time again later on, because this is a convenient location to do back in time from. So now pretty much we're just going to go and meet Zelda, or plot progression.
So at this point, this is probably the moment, the part of the game that every single new runner really just hates. We have a trick coming up, and it is probably one of the more precise tricks in this game. It's called Sword and Shield Skip. So basically, right at this point of the game, what you're supposed to do is go back to Orden and get the sword and the shield from a couple different places in Orden. But because we did the back in time glitch, those no longer exist in Orden. So actually, we can't even, like, Audie can't go back and get them even if he wanted to. So basically, he's just going to lure this Boblin all the way over to the other side, where there's this Midna text trigger that won't let you pass until you've gotten the sword and the shield. And then he's going to do a bit of a setup to, well, sort of a setup to put the Bokolin in the right, or the Boblin into the right position, so that he can do a jump attack into him and then a big long jump attack into the trigger past the text trigger that basically lets you go through to the other side. So hopefully he can get it pretty quickly, because this is a very luck-based trick.
Yeah, so he's using the senses to look for a specific spot on the ground to try to get the Boblin to be at. And he wants the Boblin to attack him a certain way.
Nice.
Very nice. Awesome. That was really good. So basically what happens right there is the Boblin gets knocked into a high position by the first attack, And then the second jump attack is able to use that position to do an even bigger jump attack over the min-attacks trigger on the ground that normally prevents you from going into the Twilight. But because the Twilight trigger is an air trigger, you can activate it without being on the ground, so it allows you to skip over the text trigger like that.
Yeah, and there are just a ton of things that can go wrong with that trick. You can be angled too far to the left or right. You can not get a long jump attack on the second one, or get a long jump attack on the first one or something. There's so much stuff that goes wrong, and a lot of new runners have a really hard time with that trick. Even more, some experienced runners sometimes have trouble with it.
Alright, so this is the first Shadow Beast fight. There's no way to win the first time. You're scripted to lose. Because that's what then allows you to come back and get the min charge, which will allow you to then beat all three.
Yeah, the sort of mechanic behind them is that you can never leave one of them alive, and so you have to use the min to charge attacks to sort of kill them at the same time. But the game just kind of puts in a check to make sure you can't just use B attacks to kill them all at the same time, just so that it forces it to give you the min charge attack.
And so we kind of just skipped past the Fair and Spring. We're not going to be completing Fair and Twilight because it's not necessary. There's also a little shortcut in this tunnel area as Wolf. You can just dig through at the beginning right here and you'll pop out at the end. And so pretty much now, the objective is to get to the next area where we have another Shadow Beast fight, and we're going to be abusing some of the jumping mechanics during that Shadow Beast fight to actually get out of bounds and perform a pretty big sequence break known as Early Master Sword.
Basically what Audie's going to do is right at the start, he's going to lure the one guy over to a certain part of the wall, and then he's going to go to another part of the wall on the other side and sort of wait for the Shadow Beast to do a certain attack, and then just like
Very
that.
nice.
So yeah.
First try.
So yeah, basically, the Shadow Beast has like 2 or 3, I think 3 different attacks that he can do, and I think only one of them works. And so basically, he had to like go at a certain sort of position, I guess. It's not like super precise, but he had to go to a certain position by the Shadow Beast and then release at a relatively precise time in order to get a high jump attack onto a lower part of the wall, and then he can just kind of navigate his way out of bounds into the Lost Woods here, which is where you get the Master Sword.
Yeah, navigating the out-of-bounds area can be a little tricky. You need to jump off at a certain point to successfully get into the Sacred Grove without voiding out.
Yeah, like, it's really weird how it works, because sometimes you'll land on the platform, but you'll still void out anyways for whatever reason. So, it's a bit of a nerve-wracking trick.
And now we just have to chase Skull Kid around a few times. Or he grants us access to the Master Sword.
Pretty relieved I got those 2 tricks.
Yeah, those are 2 of the biggest tricks in the early game. There still are some big tricks coming though, so.
Yeah, the early game of any percent is just a big gauntlet of hard trick after hard trick. So, yeah.
One thing we can mention about Wolflink's speed is that depending on what area you're in, Wolflink's base speed will actually be different. In some areas, bigger areas like provinces or in Hyrule Field, Wolflink's base speed is actually 45, which is faster than the base speed in this area, which is only 33. Which is kind of interesting.
What's the speed in Hyrule?
You mean just in like Hyrule Field?
No, in Castle.
Yeah.
Oh, in Castletown it's like 25. Yeah, Castletown's an exception.
Yeah. Also, one thing to note, on the last attack for the Skull Kid there, if you do a B attack onto the Skull Kid, depending on your angle, you'll actually go a little further than you're supposed to, and you can fall off the edge before, during the cutscene while the Skull Kid's getting injured, basically. And so that just saves a little bit of time. It saves time from falling down. It's a little annoying, though, because the angle is a little bit precise. You kind of have to... If you do it wrong, sometimes you'll grab onto the ledge, or sometimes you just won't even fall off at all, so...
And so for this fight with Skull Kid, during each cycle, Skull Kid's gonna spawn a bunch of puppets. The goal is to kill only one puppet, and then not kill any other puppets at all. Because you only need to kill one to start the timer for Skull Kid to become vulnerable. But every time you kill another puppet, you end up wasting a little bit of time just due to the few frames that get wasted when you hit one.
Yeah, every single time you kill, I think like any enemy in this game, there's like a few frames of lag or something. So it just saves that time.
And there's some technical term for it, like hit stop, I think.
Yeah.
It's intentionally programmed into the game to make it look more dramatic.
Now we've got the Master Sword puzzle, which a lot of people say really tripped them up when they were playing this game casually. It's pretty simple, though. I think the solution that we all use is like 11 moves or something. And
Yeah, 11 moves.
Yeah, it's pretty simple.
Yeah, at this point there's generally like a few minutes of cutscenes. And obviously this puzzle isn't very exciting. It's like a little bit of breather time for the runner before we get back to some more hard tricks.
See, now the Master Sword cutscene takes something like 2 minutes, so there's not really much going on now. This is one of the few unskippable cutscenes in the game. You can skip almost every single cutscene in the game, just there's some major plot-related ones like the Master Sword cutscene that you can't skip, or some, like, you can't skip the boss death cutscenes either, but yeah, most of them you still can, which is very nice for the speedrun.
Yeah, if you couldn't skip cutscenes in this game, it would be, like, unbearably long, I'd imagine. I don't know how much time a cutscene skip saves, but it's well over an hour, I would assume.
Yeah. Isn't there also something about, like, one of the tricks later on isn't possible or something because you can't skip the cutscene, if you don't skip the cutscene or something?
Well, I think the early monkeys require...
Oh yeah, that wouldn't work as well.
Dark Nut skip wouldn't work in Hyrule. Because the barriers would just... Yeah, sorry.
So yeah, one of the big advantages of having the Master Sword this early is that we can warp and transform into Wolf Link whenever we want now, and during the early parts of the game. Which is super useful, it saves backtracking, and Wolf Link's traveling speed is faster than Human Link.
And plus the Master Sword. Yeah, the Master Sword also has twice the damage of the Orden Sword that we just had, so that will save time during fights.
Yeah, so now we're going to warp back to the first portal that we got, so that we can make our way back to the Forest Temple. And it's pretty much the exact same movement that you saw before, so nothing really new. Although there's going to be one difference coming up here. Before we like actually make our way back to the Forest Temple, we're actually going to be performing a bit of a glitch known as early monkeys. And so basically in the Poison Fog area, we're going to save and then reload the file that we saved over file 3 earlier on the top of Hyrule Castle, so that we can do back in time again. So for this back in time, Adi's looking for Wolflink to be in a specific animation while he's pausing, because back in time is frame perfect, so you need Wolflink to be like in the correct position to know that you have the correct amount of frames to reset. I believe that was early again. Oh no, that was correct. All right, good.
It was early, but I did the early setup for it.
Okay.
So one thing that's different about this time that we're doing back in time is that instead of just voiding out to get rid of the title screen, Audi actually entered or sort of pressed start to actually bring up the file menu while he was voiding out, and that sort of made some weird properties in the game, so that whenever he loaded a file, it sort of put him into the King Bublin 1. The King Bublin 1 fight, and the reason that we actually had to have that other save right after getting Iron Boots is because you have to, in order for the game not to crash when you load a save, there have to be certain properties. I forget what the properties are, but the properties of the save have to be kind of pretty specific for the game not to crash when you load the save. And then also right after that, when he got into the King Bublin fight, he reset the console and then started skipping the cutscene right after, as the game was voiding out, and that did some things in the flags of this game, and you'll be able to see the outcome of it pretty soon here. But it's it's really crazy how the glitch works. It's definitely one of the more convoluted glitches in this game.
Yeah, so with what he just did, with all the back-in-time shenanigans, he set a specific value in the game known as the boss flag to be somewhere between, or somewhere less than 40, but also greater than 4. And it just so happens that that value is going to correspond to the number of monkeys that he has while in Forest Temple. So we may see some randomly spawning monkeys up here in a little bit. And also Adi's going to be using this Deku Baba to easily get rid of one of the spiders up here. Unfortunately it missed. Throwing to try and kill one of those spiders is finicky, and it'll just miss sometimes, depending on what the spider's doing.
Yeah, their hitboxes are kind of weird.
It's okay though, there's another Deku Baba. Hopefully we can get one of them this time. Because trying to climb up the ledge with both spiders active is a pain and usually never works out.
Yeah. Okay, that was decent luck there with the position of the second spider. The spiders in this game are pretty good at noticing you. If you aren't moving at all, they won't they won't really notice you. But if you are moving, they'll pretty much come at you immediately and knock you off. So they kind of always have to be facing the other direction.
Alright, so first we have one monkey, and now we have 4. So hello monkeys. And these monkeys are going to help us cross the bridge, or cross the gap over the broken bridge to get to the Gale Boomerang. And so that obviously skips having to actually go and collect any of the monkeys. Anyway, now we get to the Ook fight for the Gale Boomerang. Ook can hop around a random amount of times on these totem poles. The least amount is 2, so that was really good right there. Now it's just a jump slash quick spin and a stab, Ook is dead. And now we get another rather long unskippable cutscene before we get the most broken item in the game, the Gale Boomerang. The reason the Gale Boomerang is broken is due to how jump attacking works in this game. Basically, if you target an object from far enough away, Link will actually try to do a jump attack that completely makes its way over to the object, so you can jump attack at some ridiculously high speeds in this game. And it just so happens that you can use the Gale Boomerang as an object that Link will target and like throw it really far away, so that you can jump attack to wherever it is. There are certain conditions that have to be met for a jump attack with the Gale Boomerang to work, though. So you can't just do it anywhere you want, but it's pretty versatile, and we'll be seeing it right up here just after we exit Forest Temple. We're not going to be completing Forest Temple because it's not necessary.
So at this point, the game kind of expects you to, first off, have already beaten the Twilight here, but it also expects you to have beaten the Forest Temple. And before you've done that, there's a min-text trigger preventing you from leaving the forest into Hyrule Field, just to make you progress through the plot. But using the long jump attack method with the boomerang that Jinnis just explained, we can actually get past that trigger, and so we can basically that's what lets us skip the Forest Temple. And it's also another important thing to note that the long jump attack with the boomerang is the main glitch that doesn't work in the Wii version of this game, which is the main reason that the Wii version is a lot slower than the GameCube version. And why you don't see very many Wii speedruns.
Yeah, so that's a lot more precise than Adi just made it look.
Yeah.
You do not have a lot of leniency with getting over that trigger. Anyway, now we're in Hyrule Field. And Wolf Link's running speed here is much faster than it is in most other areas, so it's pretty fast to go across this Wolf Link. Although there is a trigger up here for the mailman that usually gets played, but again, with another long jump attack, we can skip over the trigger. This one's much more lenient than the Farron escape was, so it's not too hard to get. And now we'll make our way over to the Elden Twilight.
So coming up here, right away, we have another Shadow Beast fight, and right after the Shadow Beast fight is probably, I would say, one of the most annoying tricks, not because it's hard or anything, but because it is a one-frame trick that saves roughly a minute, and you can only go for it once. So it's really just a shot in the dark whether or not you get it, and it's just an annoying trick to have in the run.
Yeah, so after the Shadow Beast fight ends, there's one frame where you can do an input as Wolf Link. And if you do a jump attack, you can actually void out over the edge into the gorge. And that will respawn you in this area and get you out of a force trigger that takes you back to Farron. Alright, so unfortunately we didn't get it, but that's fine. That just means that the route we're using is very slightly slower now. And it also pushes a somewhat difficult trick a little bit later into the run. And so now that we're back in Farron, we're going to actually do Farron Escape again. Except this time, when we get to Hyrule Field, we're actually going to go over to the Lanayru province and jump into Lake Hylia. And one sort of I guess slap in the face that the HD version of this game has is that Gorge Void in the HD version is actually 100% consistent. But it's not useful in that game right now. So it's kind of stupid that it worked out that way. But that's just what happened. Anyway, we're not going to be turning into Wolflink right now. We're actually going to be calling Epona to ride across Hyrule Field, because we're actually going to be doing a glitch known as Gate Clip, where we use Epona and Human Link to sort of just clip through a gate right now. Or no, wait, we're not going to do that right now, never mind.
Sorry, Jim.
Not quite yet.
Some runners do it the way that Jim was explaining, but this is another method which actually just sort of cuts out the gate clip altogether. The gate clip is actually it's a really annoying trick because there's so many variables that go into it, and sometimes it takes a long time to clip the gate, even if you have the right angle with Epona and everything. So doing it the way that Audie's doing it right now, it's just, I guess, a more consistently faster way of doing it, I guess. It is technically slower, but it's not by very much, and it's just a lot more consistent, so. And plus it shows off another really cool trick, though.
Yeah, we will still be going past the gate, just not clipping past it. But anyway, now we're back to where we would have gotten respawned if Audie had successfully gotten the Gorge Void earlier. And we're going to be doing a trick known as the Rupee Roll and the Gorge Skip coming up here.
Rest in peace, Zombie Hover.
Yeah, so first, Audie's going to dig up this yellow rupee next to this tree right here. And he's going to be using a long jump attack to try and grab the rupee while he's on top of this fence on the left right here. It's very precise aiming. He does it correctly. He's going to get the rupee and then roll over to the other side of the bridge. Or the other side of the ledge. And using some hops, we can get around the fence but stay on the ledge. And then using a long jump attack, we can completely jump over the gorge and make our way to Kakariko Village.
It's a really cool trick. It's probably one of my favorites in the run. There is another setup that it actually makes the trick a lot easier, where basically you do two targets onto the fence and kind of like do a jump attack right as the first target disappears, and you also get it. It basically takes away having a really precise first target, but it's still a pretty precise trick because you have to. You're basically on a timer. As soon as you pull up the rupee, if the rupee disappears, you can't do the trick because you need the rupee to be able to do it. So it's still a nerve-wracking trick. And earlier, if you saw, right before Audie entered Kakariko, he kind of walked around the little edge there before getting into Kakariko. The reason for that is because actually right in front of Kakariko there is a loading zone basically that brings you into the King Bublin 1 fight. And if he hits that, it sort of permanently sets the trigger for fighting King Bublin 1, which kind of changes Kakariko's state for the rest of the run, and it ends up losing like a minute total throughout the run or something, or like 40 seconds or something.
Yeah, so now we got the Elden Twilight coming up here. We do have to still do the Elden and Lanayru Twilights, even though we skipped the Farron Twilight.
And in the graveyard as human, you can kind of just side hop into that well there and clip into it and get into the loading zone for the basement. Normally, to get to the basement, you would have to go into the sanctuary, do a bit of stuff there, like you'd have to light a torch and then fall down into the basement after a cutscene. But, of course, by going backwards, we're able to skip all of that. And then Audie's just going to be warping out because we're going to be doing the rest of the Elden Twilight a little bit later. It just saves a little bit of time doing it. So Audie just has to go and do the fair and escape one last time. That's the last time you're going to see it during the run. If you fail the Gorge Void trick, that 1-frame jump attack into the void, unfortunately you have to do this trick 3 times, which is a little bit annoying, especially if you do this setup list route, or method, which is what Audie's doing. Yeah, he got it all 3 times very well, so that was nice.
Anyway, now we're gonna get on Epona, who's conveniently under the ground here that we placed earlier. And we're just gonna be riding her out of bounds over here so that we can get past the Linde Root Gate and make our way into Lake Hylia.
And this area is a little bit kind of buggy. You're not supposed to come this way at all, and so it kind of doesn't really know what to do. It kind of, I mean, as you can see, Link's kind of just jittering around there a bunch. But yeah, you're normally supposed to come from a completely different angle.
Alright, so now we got another hard trick coming up. This is known as the Pillar Clip. Basically, we're going to be sinking down to the bottom of Lake Hylia using the iron boots, and then swimming up to clip out of bounds through a pillar that's leaning up against a wall. And then once we're out of bounds underwater, we're going to be making our way into the Lake Bed Temple. So right now, Audie's... No, you can speak.
It's a bit of an annoying trick because we don't have the water tunic at all, so we can't breathe underwater. So Audie's on a bit of a timer right here, and it's a bit of a precise timer too. You don't have very much time to spare.
Even if you do this really well, you'll only make it with maybe like 1 or 2 seconds of air left. Alright, nice. That was really fast.
That's another one of the hardest tricks in the run.
And so now we're actually going to be save warping past the first tunnel in the Lake Bed Temple. Normally you wouldn't be able to do this. This is only possible if you have the Master Sword, because the game expects that if you have the Master Sword, you must have already been to the Lake Bed Temple and like gone through it. And if that wasn't possible, like this trick or like getting into Lake Bed early would be useless because you wouldn't be able to get through the first tunnel at all. Anyway, the purpose of coming to Lake Bed right now is to get the Claw Shot and to get Uku. And pretty much Lake Bed is just sort of an LJA playground. There's gonna be lots of jump attacking, lots of long jump attacking.
Right up ahead of here, we've got the fabled double LJA, which it actually looks pretty cool if you've never seen it before. He's going to be targeting a couple specific spots when he's on the bridge here, and then doing a double LJ, and getting to a certain spot on the lower level.
And now we're moving the staircase around so that we can access Uku. The reason we need Uku is because we're actually going to be stealing a bomb bag later. And it's also useful to have Uku just to get back into Lake Bed faster. Land dive.
So now right here, Audie's going to be going to the mini-boss of the dungeon to get the Claw Shot, but he's actually going to be going in backwards. And normally this wouldn't be possible, but because of the early monkeys glitch that Audie did a lot earlier, that glitch is sort of still active, or more accurately, the early boss flags is still active. So by using that, he can actually enter backwards, because you start the fight by looking up onto the ceiling, which is where Deku Toad is, but it doesn't let you do that from this side right here if you haven't already started the fight. But with the boss flag set, it lets you do it.
Yeah, so thankfully when you skip the cutscene for the Deku Toad fight, it just automatically puts you into the room.
And it is possible to do a one cycle on Deku Toad, which hopefully Audie will get. Basically, most enemies in this game, especially like bosses and mini-bosses, are programmed to like sort of stop being vulnerable if you finish a combo on them, but if you just never finish a combo on them, they never stand up. They do still have a time limit, so he got it right there. They still have a time limit for standing up, so you still have to get in a certain amount of attacks, at least for this fight. You have to get a certain amount of attacks in before that time limit is up, so you have to get 10 attacks in, and it's a little bit precise. I think you have like 7 frames of error if you do double slashes or something like that. But yeah, it definitely makes this fight go a lot faster.
Yeah, so now we're going to be save warping back to the front of Lake Bed, or the beginning. And we're going to be using Ugu to get out and continue on our way in the Lanayru Twilight.
So coming up here is the sort of the start of the Lanayru Twilight segment, basically. Well, we're going to be leaving and going and doing Elden Twilight right before we start Lanayru Twilight, but we have to do a few things first in Lanayru Twilight. And one of those is a fight with a Kargarok and a Bublin or something like that. And there's a fast strat that Audie's going to be doing for the King Bublin fight, or not fight, the Kargarok fight here, but it's a little bit risky because it has a chance of, if you do it wrong, it actually has a chance of crashing the game, and so you just kind of have to be careful of that. Basically, he's going to be luring the Kargarok into the water, and what that does is the Bublin that's on the back of the Kargarok there is programmed to die immediately if it touches water. So basically, by luring the Kargarok into the water, it just immediately kills him. But if the Kargarok grabs you when you're human, it will crash the game after a few seconds. So it's a little bit risky, but they're pretty consistent. So yeah, right there. It was very good.
Yeah, because the trigger for the cutscene of going up or flying up Zora's River is the Bolton dying. Now we have to transform back into Wolf at the start of this, otherwise the camera starts to get all crazy. If you try to fly with the Kargarok as human across Zora's River.
One thing to note about this Kargarok fight is that there actually is a faster method of getting through the whole thing. Right near the start, there's this pillar that sort of comes out of the ceiling, and you can kind of fly in between that and the wall and clip out of bounds, and then you can sort of take just a more direct path to the exit, but it is pretty precise, and flying when you're out of bounds is also really finicky because the camera starts kind of trying to correct itself and it just can't, so it's a little bit risky, so nobody really goes for it in RTA. And coming up right after here, there's a 1-frame Midna tech skip again. There are a lot of them in the game, so.
Yeah, usually when you spawn in an area and you have like a text trigger that you spawn in, you have 1 frame before that where you can do an input. And during those times, there are some text triggers that you can like jump attack out of, for instance, or side hop out of. So usually you try to go for those to save those extra few seconds.
Coming up here is the one instance where Midna talks before a Midna jump attack, or like one of those Midna jump things, and you can't do the 1-frame jump. For whatever reason, this time just the frame doesn't exist.
But yeah, pretty much the reason we're coming here now is to get the warp portal to Zora's domain, which is necessary to get anyway. But it's just convenient to get it now and then go back to do the Elden Twilight. And pretty much the sole reason we have to do the Elden Twilight is because we need to get the meteor, or like warp the meteor back to Zora's domain to break the ice and start the water flow.
So inside the shop here, there is a cool strat that's basically, yeah, if you sort of do a jump attack or a B attack onto the side of the wall there and then you target the bug, he kind of just runs all the way down to the bottom, which saves a lot of time over going up and getting him.
Now we have the hotel bugs. Now, this first bug is like located in the pipe above the fireplace right here. And depending on where you're standing will actually affect how the bug jumps out of the pipe. So you want to kind of be standing off to the left so that the bug jumps down onto the ground. If you're standing like more to the right, the bug will actually jump up onto the platform and you won't be able to kill it as quickly. And you can skip climbing up those ledges by just jumping to the right.
I didn't know there was a blue rupee.
It can either be green, blue, or yellow, or nothing. It's like one of those random, like, rupee boxes.
So right here, there's a bug that's behind this this cabinet that's up here. If you jump at it at the right angle, he'll kind of jump to the back and still be on the main ground. But if you sort of jump when you're like jump into it at a straight angle, the bug will jump up to the top, and that wastes a little bit of time.
Yeah, coming up here we have the bomb house skip. As Human Link, we can use the Gale Boomerang to long jump attack across right here and skip going over a trigger for the bug that crawls into this house. And then we can actually activate it much later and then kill the bug before it even gets into the house, which will spawn the 3 tiers out here and just kind of get rid of the house altogether, even though we never blew it up.
One of the weirder tricks. This house just disappears all of a sudden. Going for the brake slide.
Yeah, Audie trying to be the task.
I guess we never really explained what brake sliding is. Basically, brake sliding is a really hard mechanic to do. Basically, what you have to do is, when you're running, you have to lock on and then let go and hold the ESS position in the opposite direction on the next frame. And then Link sort of turns around and starts, like he'll conserve his speed and sort of be going in the other direction. He'll kind of be walking backwards, and it'll look kind of weird. But it's very precise to do, and it basically doesn't really save time in an RTA setting. the TAS uses it all the time. But...
Yeah, it's used extensively in tassing because it actually increases Link's speed if he uses it going up a slope. It's really strange. Anyway, we only got a few bugs left here before we're out of Elven Twilight. Normally that bug tries to burrow into the ground, but if you attack it fast enough, you don't give it enough time to do that. Now this is the first Shadow Beast fight that has more than 3 Shadow Beasts. Usually the earlier fights just have 3 Shadow Beasts, but as you get farther into the game, they start adding more and more to like add difficulty to the fights. And they also like enclose some of them off.
This last bug is a little bit annoying to get just because there's so many other enemies around in the same area. There are other bugs and some Cargrocks there that just kind of want to ruin your day sometimes, but they played nice for the most part here.
Yeah, now Malo's scared of Wolf Link. Doing that jump attack actually wastes a little bit of time, but it's funny if you get it. Anyway, now we're gonna go and get the meteor, so that we can break the ice at Zora's domain and start the linear Twilight.
Apparently Midna thinks that 3 seconds is a very long time. She'll say in the cutscene up ahead when you're trying to warp it that this rock has been here for a while, but it literally just landed in the speedrun. Normally this rock is supposed to fall when you're actually coming to the second dungeon, but we actually skip the second dungeon altogether in this run. So we kind of do things a little bit out of order for that reason. Right there was a 1-frame side hop out of a Midna text trigger, and that Midna text trigger actually is a little bit interesting because it's actually has the flag set for whether or not activating that text changes the map for this area or for Zora's domain and for Lake Hylia, and so the map actually isn't updated now, and so basically the map is going to look like there's no water in Lake Hylia or in Zora's domain for the rest of the run.
Yeah, so now we're starting the linear Twilight. Unfortunately, the longest Twilight section. As you progress through the game, the Twilight sections get longer and the bugs become more spread out.
Fortunately, this is the last Twilight that we have to do.
There we go. Yeah, sometimes the bugs can run around and be a nuisance if you fail to, like, kill them immediately. And sometimes luring those Shadow Beasts together can be a bit of a pain, just due to like how close you are to the wall. Because if Wolf Link like bonks on the wall, then the attack gets canceled, and usually like the one remaining Shadow Beast will wake up the other two. Also, you'll notice that we've been collecting rupees every now and then during this run. We actually need 300 in total for the run, which is to repair the City in the Sky cannon later on.
The majority of those rupees we're going to be getting from Snow Peak Ruins, actually. There are a couple orange rupees, which are worth 100, and they're 100% consistent there, so most of the rupees will come from there, and then the rest of them will mostly come from Arbiter's Grounds, but we still need about, I think, like 20 RNG rupees throughout the first 2 hours of the run, and getting more of them just can save getting a rupee later.
Okay, so right there, Adi tried to side hop out of the waterfall at a specific time. Unfortunately, he didn't quite get up to the ledge, but it's fine because we have the claw shot, so we can just make our way back up here. If you do get that waterfall jump, it saves around, like, I think 5 seconds getting to this bug.
Lily pad bugs also are the worst thing in this game. They are very random in their positions. Sometimes they'll be really nice and they'll line themselves up perfectly. You can kill both of them just right away. Other times they'll be like far apart and they'll just be really hard to hit. Those are two of the probably the most random bugs in the entire game.
Yeah, to activate this bug, you have to talk to Iza before the bug will reveal itself. And now we get to run for like 90 seconds. It's very exciting.
Coming up ahead in this next room, it's actually faster to turn the camera down or like sort of move it up, I guess, so that it's facing the ground. It just saves some time with lag because the game, it's a little bit laggy right here as you're running towards, I guess it's West Hyrule Field. And even in West Hyrule Field, it's also a little bit laggy, so it's just a little bit faster to turn the camera down.
Yeah, the main reason we have to like run across all these fields is because there's one measly bug that we have to get in Castletown. But the game like wants you to go into Castletown during this section because it wants you to get this warp portal that we're going to be fighting some Shadow Beasts for.
It is possible to skip this, actually, but it is a very convoluted method and is not useful anywhere except for low percent. Shoutouts to low percent. It involves using another one out of bounds, but it's really complicated and nobody really does it in anything, so... Yeah, it's a really cool trick, though.
Yeah, having this warp portal is useful also because we need to come back to Castletown a few times. And if you skip it now, I don't think it's possible to get it at all later in the game.
Yeah, I think once the Twilight's done, it's gone forever.
Yeah, because Wolf-Link's base speed is so low in Castletown, it's actually fastest to just do constant dash cancels.
Yeah, it's actually faster to travel as human in Castletown, but it's not faster to transform, I don't think, and then go, because you also have to transform back here to get the bug, so yeah, it's just faster to do dash canceling.
Yeah, so you want to make sure that you actually collect the tier before you warp, otherwise the tier's just going to stay there. Break sliding is actually not faster in Castletown, because Wolf-Link's speed reduces too much before you can actually do it, which makes it not useful.
There's a little bit of faster strat you can do here by skipping the first bug, just by kind of going to the left here. It just sets up the bug, because the bug's gonna like sort of run forward now to catch up with you, and it's just a little bit faster because it sets up a little bit nicer when you grab the first bug. So it saves, I think, 1 second.
Yeah, it's just one of those small time savers. So after we collect the 4th bug on Zora's River, we're just going to kind of ram ourselves into the ground right here, so that we fall back down and go back to Lake Hylia.
And the cool thing about that is that once we respawn in Lake Hylia, it puts us right next to the second last bug, which is the last bug that's available to us right now. And then right after that, the last bug is going to appear.
Yeah, this is also the closest ground to the center of Lake Hylia, where these rafts are. And
now we've got boss bug.
The boss bug.
There is you can do a re-grab on him. Basically, the way he works is after you've attacked him once, he's going to go into the water and start circling around, and then he kind of comes at you, and then he's supposed to do that phase again. But if you do a jump attack on him, it sort of slows, like once he's coming at you, it sort of slows him down, and then you can jump and re-grab him before he has time to get up into the air. So that saves actually quite a bit of time.
Yeah, you want to make sure you don't re-grab too early, though, otherwise you'll get forced off. Do it very fast.
Yeah, if the boss bug is too close to the raft that you're on, I guess the game just thinks you're too close or something to the ground, and so it just pushes you out or something like that. And then right at the very end, the last hit, you're supposed to do a minute charge attack and hit all of the tentacles. But if you I failed it right there, but if you sort of target right by the first one you're going to attack and go down a little bit, you can actually like bonk into the bug, and that just kind of cancels the whole animation, and it skips it and kills the boss a little quicker.
Yeah, it saves a few seconds, but if you don't miss it, or I mean, if you do miss it, it's not that big of a deal.
It saved too much.
But yeah, now we're finally done with Twilight, and we can go do more exciting things. So the first piece of business that we have is we're going to go and steal the bomb bag from Isa using Uku that we got in the Lakebed Temple.
Yeah, we're really going to want a bomb bag for what we do next. Not necessarily for the bombs, but for a glitch that the bombs will actually have. Or rather, not the bombs that we're going to get, but as soon as he gets the bomb bag, he's going to be going back to Lakebed Temple to get rid of the bombs so that he can get some water bombs. And the water bombs are what's really useful in this game. But first, before we actually go and get the bomb bag, we actually want to go and howl at the Howling Stone first. So the thing is, because we skipped the forest Twilight, we never actually activated the Golden Wolf to appear there, which gives us the ending blow, and you actually need the ending blow to be able to beat the game. You can skip it up to the very end of the game, but then you will not be able to do the very last attack on Ganon, on Ganondorf, and so you can't beat the game without it. So basically, we're going to howl to make a different Golden Wolf appear, and we're going to get the ending blow from there, because the game works that way.
Yeah, it doesn't matter like which Golden Wolf you're at. You learn the hidden skills in a set order. So the first one will always be the ending blow, no matter where it is. Yeah, so to actually get in here, we need to be a human. And thankfully there's a sign we can transform behind so that we're out of Isa's eyesight.
And so once this Shadow Beast fight finishes, Isa brings you into her little shack there, and it starts a bit of a side quest for basically getting the mini game ready. Like the boating minigame, but in order to do the boating minigame, she gives you a Lent bomb bag, and if you have any Uku at that point, you can just use Uku to get out of there and steal the bomb bag, and the game doesn't prevent that at all. That was just a bit of a programming oversight, because you could even do this casually if you just used Uku and got out a lake bed while you were doing it, and then went and did it. So, yeah, it was just a bit of a programming oversight.
Yeah, so now we need to empty our bomb bag of all 30 regular bombs, and so that we can fill it with water bombs. And the way that we're going to be doing that is by just dropping the bombs into the water right here. Because if you just
using
continue...
the claw shot method? Come on.
You gotta save those 3 seconds. But yeah, there is a very slightly faster way of getting rid of the bombs, but it's really precise, so generally it's not really worth it.
Do you do that, Helmets?
No.
Good.
And so now that we have water bombs, we're actually going to go and get another bomb bag, because the bomb bag that we have right now is actually kind of a fake bomb bag. It's going to disappear after we save warp the next time. So it's not going to be very useful once it's completely gone.
Yes, unfortunately, there's an easy bomb egg to get inside the rock that we warped to basically thaw Zora's domain out. You blow that up and there's a Goron inside, and he gives you a real bomb bag, and so we'll use that for the remainder of the run. And just like the first bomb bag, Audie's going to be getting rid of all of the bombs inside it, but we have a little bit more time to do it, so you're going to see him dropping bombs all over the place.
Yeah, so right here, this is one reason the German version is fastest. When we get the bomb bag right here, the text is instant, whereas on every other language it's not. And that's just one of the reasons that, or that's like one of the main reasons that the German text is the fastest, because pretty much all the text in this game, as you can probably tell, is like quick text, so the length of like each individual box doesn't really matter. Like, it doesn't matter if it has 1 word or like 10 words, it's the same length, essentially.
So at this point, now that I think about it, we actually completely glossed over this trick earlier when he did it for Opponent Out of Bounds. But basically, so by warping by pressing the Z button and pressing the map button on the same frame, you sort of bring up the map and midnight at the same time, but the map comes up first. And then if you use the map to warp, right before you warp, it'll actually sort of cancel the warp by pulling up Midna. And then if you cancel out of Midna, basically it sort of half started the warping transition, or the warping, and I guess, yeah, the transition. And the first thing that it does is it actually deactivates all the loading zones in the area for whatever reason. And so by doing that, we actually deactivated a whole big loading zone throughout the entire area of Snow Peak Mountain, basically, which would send you back if you don't have the reek fishes sent. But by doing that, we're able to skip that whole side quest, and it's really nice. But map glitch, which is the glitch that gets rid of all of the loading zones, is a frame-perfect trick. So it's actually not annoying to do because there is an easy method of doing it by unplugging the controller, pressing the Z and D right, and then plugging the controller back in, and that just buffers an input of both of those on the same frame.
Yeah, because Z and D-pad right are like two of the probably hardest buttons to time on a GameCube controller, so it's nice that there's an easy method of doing the glitch.
Yeah, they aren't very good buttons, so it's kind of hard to tell whether or not they're even being pressed.
And so we can't quite go into the Snow Peak Cave yet because we actually have to reload this area. Thankfully, there's a Howling Stone up here that allows us to do this. If we tried to dig into the cave without doing this, the game would actually crash because there's no loading zone down there with map glitch active.
And so now this cave that's coming up right here is pretty annoying. There are some ice keys in it, and their actions are pretty random, and so sometimes they'll choose to just attack you and it'll waste a bunch of time. Other times they'll just play nice and not really bother you at all, so... Audi just
taking care of the keys.
Now right here, there is supposed to be a Shadow Beast fight that you need to do, but by kind of rolling around the edge of it and then doing a long jump attack into the void, it kind of thinks that you voided out at a different point of the map, and so it respawns you past the Shadow Beast fight, and so you basically just are able to skip it. The downside of it, though, is that once you beat the Shadow Beast fight, the area sort of gets rid of the fog that's in here, because you can kind of see it's a little bit hazy here. But yeah, the fight gets rid of that, but unfortunately we didn't do that, so Audie's going to have to do the entire snowboarding section here kind of blind. He's not going to be able to see very far in front of him, so it's going to be a little bit risky. There's only really one part that's a little annoying, and that's during the shortcut, and there's a good visual cue for it, so it shouldn't be an issue.
Yeah, with enough practice, this snowboarding section becomes pretty consistent, even though you can't really see where you're going. And so the fastest speed during the snowboard section that you can get is while in the air. It's very slightly faster than staying on the ground the whole time. So optimally, you jump as much as you possibly could, and then stay in the air using spin attacks.
And quick spins just kind of help you stay in the air a little bit longer. It's also possible, I've only seen it once, but it's possible when you kind of do that big jump down to where there's all of those trees, it's possible to void out there somehow. I've only ever seen it once. I don't know what causes it. It's really rare. There's probably some.
There seem to be a lot of weird void out occurrences that only seem to ever happen once to one person, and we never see of it again.
Yay, finally successful.
Also, one thing that we didn't note yet, whenever there's double doors, it's actually faster to open the right door in the GameCube version. The animation or something is like 23 frames, I think it was, faster. Something like that.
Yes, something like that, yeah.
And right here also, it's a bit past now, but Audie basically did a long jump attack over a void to get to another part of the dungeon that you weren't supposed to be able to get to early. And then also he's doing a double LJA here as well, which, yeah, this double LJ to get the small key is a little bit luck-based if you do it the way that Audie did it. The second time that the boomerang is coming like back around, it has a chance of either going out of bounds or back inbounds. And if it goes back inbounds, you can't get the attack.
Yeah, so this dungeon's pretty broken. Just gonna fall through the floor right there. The only reason we're coming to Snow Peak is so that we can get the ball and chain.
Yeah, unfortunately, the ball and chain is absolutely required for one thing in the entire game and nothing else. It's useful elsewhere, but it wouldn't save enough time to come and get it if we didn't have to use it for the Xant fight later on, which is where it's required.
Yeah, so
Also,
go
right. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Basically, if you're positioned correctly and the freezer is turning around, you can kind of just clip through the freezer into the door back here. And then you can actually open up this door from behind. Loading zones in this game don't activate just by being in them if they're behind a door. You actually have to open the door to get behind into the loading zone and actually load the next area. And now it's time for the Dark Hammer.
So yeah, Dark Hammer is a really quick fight. Basically, if you drop a bomb behind Dark Hammer and then sort of like run around him a little bit, it'll activate him to throw his ball and chain, which will make his tail vulnerable. And then if you go behind him again, the bomb will explode. It'll damage him for like half his health or something. And then doing a jump quick spin combo, jump attack quick spin combo, it'll just finish him off right away. And it's a really quick fight.
Yeah, so now we have the ball and chain. We're actually going to do just 2 more small things in this dungeon. We're going to be getting 2 orange rupees. The first one is back here. If we destroy this set of armor with the ball and chain, and then destroy the bubble inside, it actually drops an orange rupee.
Never seen a rupee land there.
Yeah, the rupee can land in a number of spots, depending on like how you hit the bubble. The reason that we side-hopped into the rupee is to avoid the text where Link is like looking at it and it says, "You got an orange rupee." Because that wastes a bunch of time.
It's also really annoying because those enemies that carry the orange rupees, if you're standing too close to the statues when you like damage them, they just won't spawn, and that kind of prevents you from getting the orange rupee. So that's something you just really need to watch out for.
Yeah, it's also possible to like knock the bubbles out of bounds when they die, in which case the orange rupee just falls out of bounds, which also isn't very helpful. So best to go slow right there to make sure you can get the orange rupees. Anyway, now that we did a save warp, we actually lost the first bomb bag that we got, so we don't have it anymore. But that's why we have this real bomb bag, so that we can keep our bombs. The next chest that has water bombs is just right up here on the right. On this set of platforms.
So it is possible for the rest of the game just to use the bombs that we have right here, but it's a little bit luck-based and finicky. Sometimes you just won't be able to, depending on your luck with Morpheal. There is another backup chest that you can get later that has 15 water bombs in them, but it's obviously slower to go for that, so... Now right here, there's also another trick, and this is a bit of a ridiculous one. So this is the Lakebed boss key. This is the only boss key skip possible in the game because, as Janice mentioned earlier, door loading zones don't exist until you actually open the door, and that's the same for boss loading zones. But this one, the loading zone already exists because the trigger isn't actually opening the door. It's just falling into this area just because of how the boss fight works. And the fun, now comes one of the most annoying and yet fun parts of the run, in my opinion, because we get to fight Morpheal without the water tunic, so we can't breathe underwater. And so the way that you're supposed to refill your air is by doing a glitch with the water bombs called swimming with water bombs, and by pressing A and dropping the water bomb once you actually are carrying it, you can refill your air. But it's still really finicky, and sometimes it's just, it wastes it. Sometimes it's just, Morpheal's luck is just bad.
So, alright, there we go. The eye wasn't being very cooperative right there. So right before the eye goes back in, we're going to pull a water bomb. And so now Link is going to be swimming up during this cutscene with the water bomb above his head. And then once the cutscene ends, we can swim around for a little bit and then use this water bomb to refill our air and see if we can get the first hit onto Morpheal. Because we have to do 3 attack cycles onto Morpheal to finish it off. Although Morpheal, in general, is just a pretty passive boss. It's very easy to avoid any of the attacks it tries to give you.
So right after each set of hits that Audie does, he's going to force unequip the iron boots by equipping something over it. And then by doing that, it sort of automatically just knocks you off of Morpheal, which is really useful because normally, if you don't do that, Morpheal has this like animation where he starts swinging you around a bunch and it just wastes a lot of time. And that's time that we don't have with the air meter. So fortunately, there is a way of getting off there quickly. And also with doing that, you can actually get a re-grab if you claw shot quickly enough, and Morpheal's angle is correct, so right there. And by doing that, we can just kind of skip having to go to the bottom. And with that, Morpheal is dead.
Yeah, it was a really nice Morpheal fight.
Yeah. Morpheal can sometimes just troll you in really bad ways. Morpheal can like start turning the other direction, like you'll be swimming towards him or her or whatever, and then it'll just turn around and go the other way, and it's just an annoying fight.
I've had the worst luck with this heal the last couple days, so I'm really relieved that it actually worked out this time. Because dying to this boss is really devastating, and there's this many minutes, so you don't really want to die to this boss.
For 3 minutes every death or something like that. And it's also sometimes a little bit luck-based, because sometimes, it's pretty rare, but sometimes Morpheal decides to go up, like as high as Morpheal possibly can, on like the first hit, and then you just don't have enough time to get to the bottom to refill your air. And it's just, when the game does that, it's just a big slap in the face.
Yeah, so at the end of the Morpheal fight, that's generally the last trick in the run that really has a chance of killing your run.
Well, not anymore,
well, unless you're a really high-level player. There's another really hard trick that comes up in the Arbiter's Grounds.
Yeah, that's like the last required hard trick of the run.
So tell me, Horn, how impossible is top 130 Lake Pit?
It's still impossible, okay? I swear.
Yeah, so now we get to experience the best music in the game. We're in the Midna's Desperate Hours section. Pretty much this is just another section where we have to progress the plot to advance on to the next part of the game.
So again, here we're going to see the dash canceling method through Castletown. Again, it's also not faster to transform here because we need to be Wolf by the time we reach Telma's bar. So this section that's coming up is also a little bit nerve-wracking, I guess. Basically, right after this cutscene ends, once Audie goes into Telma's bar, if you fall down at all, you get knocked out, or like thrown out of the bar. And if you make too much noise and stuff, and it's pretty easy to avoid that for the most part, but because of how rope physics work in this game, it's sometimes really annoying, and sometimes you'll just accidentally grab onto a ledge when you're trying to grab onto a rope, and it just kind of ruins your day. Midna's Desperate Hour is especially really bad for that, for a part that's later on.
Yeah, ropes in Zelda games in general always seem to be rather finicky. It is possible to skip these first 2 ropes with a precise jump, but it only saves a few seconds, so it's not really worth it.
Well, it's also really precise because whether or not you can actually get it also depends on the Goron cycle in the bottom, because if you're hanging off the ledge, he'll be able to see you, unless you do it extremely fast, then you can just barely get up in time, or you can just wait a little bit for the cycle for him to turn around, but it's not really worth it.
So that was our introduction to Pose. There are a few Pose that we have to collect in this run. Technically, the one that we just got is the only required one, but...
Shadows to Rupee sliding! Woo!
Yeah, skipping the other ones that we're going to be getting takes like 10 hours, so it's not really good for speedrunning.
Shadows to low percent.
Yeah, so thankfully, because we can transform into human during this section, we don't have to carry over a lit torch to burn the web. We can just use the lantern. So now right here, we actually have to kill this Boblin, otherwise he's gonna shoot us while we try to navigate up this tower right here.
There are a few places where you can do a jump attack onto the Boblins that are here just to save a little bit of time. They are a little bit risky because most of them have like a chance, or the last one has a chance of bonking and falling down, so it's a little bit risky to go for.
They're consistent if you have always the same timing.
Oh, yeah, that probably would be.
Yeah,
now,
so
right here, it's possible to. There's the wind blows every. I don't know what the timing is, but every few seconds it sort of starts blowing, and it's possible to just barely make a wind cycle on this platform this bridge that's coming up, because the bridges sort of blow with the wind, and so yeah, right there, Audie got it. Basically, if you're fast enough, you can just barely get on the bridge as it's like falling down, and you can get off without having to wait for another wind cycle. It's not random whether or not you get the
wind cycle. The wind cycle's
always
like consistent. Thankfully, don't need more RNG in the run. Anyway, Alright, now we're going to be going to get the finishing blow. Because the golden wolf that we howled, or the howling stone that we howled to earlier spawned a golden wolf just right over here. So it's very convenient to go and get right now.
And again, without the ending blow, you can't finish the game because you just can't do the ending blow on Ganon right at the very end of the game. So it's kind of unfortunate if you ever forget it.
Yeah, there have been stories of runners who, like, during their first or second runs, they'll forget to get the ending blow, and then they'll get to the end, like, way ahead of their PB, but then they can't finish because they can't deal a final blow to Ganondorf.
I've never done that.
Yeah, I've done that. Shoutouts to Venick, who's also done that.
It's kind of hard to do that with this round nowadays, or with this route, because you're warping right in front of him. In old routes, we would warp just for the sake of getting ending blow, so it's more likely to be forgotten. Whereas for this, it's like, well, you're warping right next to him. You can't technically forget it, but it's like, you see him right there. Just get it.
Well, and even, like, I've got my splits set so that it's not like a Midna's Desperate Hour split, it's an ending blow, just so that I don't forget it. So another thing to note right there is after you get the ending blow, it always will put you back into Farron Woods because that's where you're supposed to get it. Even if we got it from a completely different wolf like we just did here. And so at this point, we need to go and set up the next sort of half of the run, basically. We need to go to Arbiter's Grounds and beat that so that we can open up the use of the Mirror of Twilight, which is broken. And so we're going to have to go to some other dungeons to get the Mirror Shards. But yeah, we need to start with this dungeon because the Mirror of Twilight's behind it.
Oh, Mirror Shard, singular.
Well, yes, okay, we only get one of them, but...
Yeah, normally you're supposed to go get 3 different Mirror Shards to repair the Mirror of Twilight, but we're actually only going to be getting 1.
Yeah, it works the same way as, say, in Ocarina of Time, how you only need to beat Shadow and Spirit in order to cause the Light Bridge to appear, and to get the Light Arrows. It's the same sort of deal, where you only need the first and the last Mirror Shards to be able to actually activate what comes after that.
Yeah, so right now we're getting Oru's memo so that we can use the cannon to get into the desert and then make our way to Arbiter's Grounds. So we can use the pillars on this wooden bridge to transform. You want to make sure that you don't run as Wolf Link onto the little island right there, otherwise you'll start a cutscene with the mini-game bird. I forget what his name is.
Plum.
Yeah.
I have to admit I do that very often.
Yeah, I've done that. I think every runner has done that before.
I usually remember the first time, but when you're coming through here the second time to go to City, just every time.
I doubt there's anyone who hasn't done it yet, so...
So yeah, just like in during the Twilight, the Linearu Twilight, it's also faster in the desert to turn your camera towards the ground because it also reduces lag.
I think ZFG found that, so big shoutouts to my boy Jay. If I remember correctly.
Could be. I remember him doing some lag reduction stuff a while back, like 3 years ago now or something.
Yeah, so normally right here the game wants you to ride one of these boars to break down the fences to get to the Arbiter's Grounds. But because we have the ball and chain early, we can actually knock down the watchtower on the side to get in. And then as Wolflink, we can actually clip past the second wooden gate by just sort of running into the space between the wooden fence and the wall on the right.
It's actually possible as human as well. I do it as human just because it's a little easier. You need like a kind of precise angle to be able to get through it. And right here, after the cutscene finishes, Audie is going to do map glitch again, and he's going to be skipping the entirety of the bubbling camp here. Because this bubbling camp is kind of, it's not that long, but there are a lot of enemies, and it's basically, it's faster to abuse the fact that getting rid of loading zones also gets rid of the void out trigger underneath the game, or underneath the area. And so he's going to do basically a jump attack into a void after he gets out of bounds, and sort of land in the trigger for the King Bublin 3 fights. And the King Bublin 3 fight is, the trigger for it kind of extends, I think, infinitely upward and downward, and so it doesn't matter if you're, like, way underneath the room, it kind of just warps you back up to the fight. And this is also the introduction to the reason why quick spins are very useful. You really need to, if you getting good at this game requires getting really good at quick spins.
Yeah, so one other danger of using map glitch is that if you die, you actually soft lock the game. So it's important to make sure you don't get hit by King Bublin during this fight.
Yeah, I forgot about
map glitch active.
I think that happened to me once. Alright, so coming up is Arbiter's Ground, which is the, well, second dungeon we're going to be beating. It's normally the fourth dungeon in the plot. And it's got a lot of really cool stuff in it.
It's a very technical dungeon.
Yeah. And this is also the last place, like, it's got the last, like, really hard trick if you actually go for it. It's not actually necessarily a hard trick, it's just extremely precise. So. Are you going for it, Audie?
Sorry, I had to unmute. Yeah, I am, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you roll into sand, you'll keep all your speed until the roll ends. So that's useful for getting across, like, small sections of sand. It is actually possible to use brake sliding to quickly navigate across, like, long portions of sand, but you don't really have to go across any long portions.
Yeah, right here, normally you would, casually, you would pretty much be Wolf at this point. These four Poes are going to come out and steal the lights from here, and you're supposed to go throughout the whole first half of the dungeon, and you're supposed to find them and kill them, and get the light to come back to this area to open the door. But the game, similar to how it would only check for the last mirror shard, it only checks for the second, third, and fourth Poe, because normally the game thinks, oh, well, you already would have had to kill the first Poe to be able to really go anywhere in the dungeon, so we'll only make it check for the last three Poes. But by doing that, you can skip the first Poe and just save that time there. But of course, as we mentioned earlier, it's kind of precise, or very precise.
Yeah, so right here, there's a pillar sticking up out of the ground on the left. I'm gonna throw a bomb right there to, like, get the little sandworms out of the way, because they could be annoying if you try to do this trick. And basically, we're gonna be backflipping up this pillar and then sliding down it to try and do a jump up to the ledge up on, or that's like above us.
Yeah, this is easily one of the most precise tricks in the game now.
so it's not unusual for this to take more than a few tries, usually.
And plus these mold worms get in your way a lot, which is why we throw the bomb at the start, but sometimes it doesn't kill all of them, and so they can still bother you.
Currently, he's not quite getting enough speed to jump off the pillar.
There we go.
Nice.
Oh, so silly.
It's a really annoying trick. It's really precise because it really matters. Your position when you're on the pillar really matters, and then your angle with the boomerang also matters a lot. So it's just, you need both to be very good, and plus it changes your position by the pillar. It changes what your angle needs to be for the trick to work. So it's really
And this lantern puzzle's the same every time. Just the lantern in front and the lantern on the left, or the torch in front and the torch on the left. And so now we're gonna do the last Poe first. Actually, this is normally the 4th Poe that we get.
And so this Poe works the same as the last Poe in Ocarina of Time did, where it splits into 4, and then you can only attack one of them after a little bit. But this part is a little bit random. So basically, well, quite random. So basically, these guys can spin around you as long as they want, and then after they do that, depending on which Poe you get to attack, there's actually a consistent setup you can do to basically make them start spinning around you again. Now, Audie didn't quite get it here, but yeah, there's, depending on which side you get, it's different what you need to do, so it's a bit of an annoying fight.
Got good RNG with the positioning, though. Got the Poe near the door.
And it's important to remember here to actually sniff the last this Poe, because in order to get to the normal 2nd Poe, you actually have to have the pose sent. But because we don't kill the first Poe, we have to get it from somewhere else. And every single Poe gives off the pose sent, fortunately, so we can just get it from the 4th Poe. And then right here, Audie's just pushing the block to basically open up the shortcut so that he doesn't have to do Poe skip again.
And so once again, we need 300 rupees to repair the city in the Sky Can.
So yeah, the rest of the ones... Yeah, the rest of them are from... every single Redead night will consistently drop a 20 rupee, or a red rupee. So he's going to be getting, I guess, 2 more of those, and then just 2 rupees from someone else.
Yeah, so because we skipped the first Poe, the lighting in the main room is kind of screwed up. Darker than it would usually be. Also, one thing we didn't mention, I don't think yet, is that whenever you use a first-person item like the boomerang or the claw shot, it's always faster to actually go into first-person mode by pressing C up before you use the item, instead of picking up the item directly. So now it's time to go back to the upper level to get the 3rd Poe.
One of the better things about doing the Poe order where you skip the first Poe is that you actually come into the third Poe room backwards, and that the third Poe room is extremely annoying because there are 2 Re-Dead Knights and a lot of Stall Children around there, and normally if you go through the normal way, they just all get in your way. You usually get screamed at by one of the Re-Dead Knights, but by going through backwards, actually, Re-Dead Knights and the Stall Children are actually programmed to not really notice or attack you if you're well, they're not programmed to attack you if they're facing away or if you're facing away from them. But well, actually, I don't think the Re-Dead Knights qualify that. But if basically if they're behind you, they don't really notice you exist, I guess. So they just don't attack you. And doing the Poe route backwards also is really nice because in the next room, normally what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to get a key in that room, and then a bunch of shadow rats or whatever they're called are gonna fall down, and they have like this chance of grabbing onto you, which just slows you down. But of course, because we came in backwards, the door is already open that we would need to use the key for, so we can just kind of skip right past that.
Yeah, that's the reason that we needed to get the key on the lower levels so that we could actually open this door from behind because it's locked. And now because we have the second, third, and fourth Poe flames, we can go through as the door opens.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a shame that there's no fast way to skip all of the Poes. The only method we have takes like 10 hours to do, so it's a little annoying, but...
Anyway, now we're gonna get the boss key early and kind of go through the rest of the dungeon backwards here.
Yeah, it's possible to even just get to the other side of this gap as human, doing it without glitches. You can literally just roll through, like, past the sand there if you do a jump roll onto it, and it's just, I guess it was a bit of a design oversight.
Please ignore this movement.
Yeah, so as Wolflink, you can kind of just cross large sand gaps by just doing a B attack like every 2 seconds.
Right here, there's a pretty fast strat that Audie's going to do. He's going to drop a bomb by the first one, and then pull out a bomb and drop it right by the little ledge he climbs up. And by doing that, it just blows up the Stalfos really quickly, and we don't really even have to worry about them. And then coming up after this is the Death Sword fight, and it's actually possible to skip Death Sword, but that's probably the most precise trick in the game, and it doesn't even save that much time, so there's no reason to go for it, RTA. Especially since the actual fight for him, there's a really good strat for it now, so the fight itself doesn't even take that long.
Yeah, you have to go through the first part of this fight anyway to be able to skip him.
Oh, going for the 5-hit strat. So yeah, by using the ball and chain, it does a ton of damage on Death Sword, so it only takes a few slashes after that to kill him. The only downside being that the ball and chain strat is really finicky. I personally have never been able to figure out how it works, especially getting 5 hits. So that was really good.
So now that we have the spinner and we already have the boss key, it's fastest to just save warp back to the beginning of the dungeon and then get back to the boss room that way. Instead of going through like all the puzzles that the game normally wants you to go through.
So because we have the spinner, we can kind of just get across large pits of sand as human really easily. And that actually makes it faster to be human at this point. The old strat was actually just to transform as wolf and get around here, but someone figured out that that was actually a little bit slower.
I see you found that out.
Why am I not surprised?
And the video was, why don't we do this? Question mark too. I think because every time people found something really stupid that people did for a long time, which is really slow. Similar to something that's coming up in a second, where I'm gonna use the spinner again to get over sand. The video is also called "Why Don't We Do This Number 3" or something. So
yeah, I think SVA has a lot of those.
I remember seeing a video a long time ago of like timings between just traveling places as Human Link versus Wolf Link, and like the speedrun always used to use Wolf Link, but SVA showed that Human Link was actually faster in a lot of different places. Alright, so coming up we have the Star-Lord fight, and this fight is kind of luck-based. At least the first phase. The second phase is consistent. But basically, what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to use the spinner to sort of jump off the wall and hit Star-Lord's spine, because he's like fixed in the center of the arena. But there are, I don't actually know what they're called, but they're like these Redead/Stalfos type things that are in the middle, and they can spawn at random locations, and as it progresses in the fight, there's just more of them spawn, so sometimes you can just get really bad luck.
Yeah, so the first two cycles of this phase, you usually have a pretty clear opening to Stallard's spine, but the third cycle, Stallard will spawn in like a row of 5 soldiers right in front of his spine, so you can't get at it from the front.
There have been instances where that line just didn't spawn for some people. We don't know what causes that. But that was unfortunate.
that was silly.
That's the first phase of this fight. This fight has 2 phases. Kind of funny, like the cutscenes that make up this fight and the time in between is actually longer than the fight itself.
So for this phase of the fight, there's a really fast method of doing it, which you're gonna see, but the casual strat would be to, as you can see, the center pillar kind of has this spinner track going up in a spiral. You're supposed to like keep jumping back and forth to avoid some spikes and to avoid Stalwart shooting these balls at you. But by doing a bit of, I hesitate to say manipulation, but I guess there's some manipulation going on at the start of the fight where you can just knock him down before he even has a chance to really run away from you.
Yeah, so if you get onto the track while Stellar's in a certain part of his attack animation, you can't move away in time, so you can hit him immediately, essentially.
And this is another section where you really need to be good at quick spins. Because if taking multiple phases during, or like multiple cycles during this second part of the fight is extremely slow. So being able to one cycle him is, like, it's very useful.
so now the gate opens up leading to the outside. That gate is actually open by default, but there's a trigger in front of the boss door that we use to enter this room that actually sets the gate to be put down.
Coming up here, there's a Shadow Beast fight. This is the first fight that actually has 5 Shadow Beasts rather than 3 or 4. But it works no different than any of the other ones. So right here, you're actually supposed to, once the Shadow Beast fight finishes, you're supposed to go and use the spinner on the statue in the center there and go up and lower the platform, and that's how you find out that you need to go and grab the mirror shards, because like the mirror raises up and you find that it's broken. But you can actually just warp away. Now, there is a sort of check that prevents you from doing that, but by moving all the way into the map, it sort of bypasses that check, and so you're able to warp away anyways. The downside to that being that if we want to warp now, we have to do it that way for the rest of the run.
That's kind of a silly little oversight that it works like that. Anyway, now we're going to be... Oh, sorry, you can talk.
I was just gonna say they fixed that on the HD version. But yeah, you can talk.
Yeah, okay, so now we're going to be doing the early City in the Sky, or early City in the Sky canon sequence break, where we're going to be transforming in a certain position in front of that owl statue, and then just kind of going through it.
It's a really simple glitch. It's actually not even that precise in this version. They tried to patch it in TPHD by just making the owl statue way bigger than it should be, but they still didn't patch it.
Yeah,
you can still clip right through it in the same way.
And thankfully so, because this sequence break right here saves like an hour.
Or more, yeah. It prevents you from having to beat Temple of Time, I think, right?
Yeah, it skips the quest to actually like move the owl statue out of the way.
Yeah.
And the Temple of Time. And it skips the need to beat Snowy.
Right. So yeah, this is the point where we need all 300 rupees that we've been collecting throughout the whole run. Fortunately, there is, right above Fier, there's actually a red rupee, like up in, I guess, the balcony of his little house thing there. And so that's a good backup rupee if you're not at 300 rupees, which I've had to use it sometimes. I guess that is one other thing to note. If you do save warp or save and quit inside the cannon arena, it for some reason breaks the game and you aren't able to warp the cannon and you aren't able to tell the guy to leave if you've been playing the game normally. Shad normally comes down there, but yeah, for some reason it's just you can't progress the game anymore, and so I think that was fixed though for even some of the later versions of TP, Wii at least. I might be wrong about that, but. So now we're in City in the Sky, and this is honestly one of the most impressive dungeons when done quickly. There are so many long jump attacks because there's so many voids, and of course, if you throw the boomerang over a void, you can do a long jump attack. So long jump attacks are very useful because of that. There's just a lot of places to do them, but there's also just a lot of really cool like fight strategies and whatnot. Like it's a very impressive dungeon.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we explained this earlier, but for a long jump attack to actually work with the boomerang either needs to be over a void or it needs to be over a surface that's higher than Link's feet to get a full speed long jump attack. It doesn't just work anywhere.
So right here at the start of the very first room is where you would get the backup chest of water bombs if you got bad luck at Morpheal or something. But of course, Audie doesn't need to do that because he got good luck and still has enough bombs to finish the run. And coming up here is Audie's going to do something that doesn't look like it'll make sense. It'll look really random. Basically, yeah, he's going to transform in front of the door and then enter it as Wolf and then just transform back into human right after. The reason that he does that, actually, is because right at the top of the center room here, there's a fan that normally is spinning. But it was discovered not too long ago, like maybe a year or two ago, that you can grab onto That's interesting. Okay. Anyways, it was discovered that actually there's a trigger at the start of this room that actually starts the fan from up here, or starts the fan spinning. But by transforming into Wolf and then entering the door, that actually prevents the thing from starting to spin because I guess Wolfling's size doesn't quite hit the trigger when you enter the door. So it just, and by doing that, we're actually able to get the boss key early, but we won't be getting it quite yet.
Yeah, so the reason we're coming over here is to get a small key. And getting this small key will actually change the position that you get sent to when you save warp in this dungeon, because there's a cutscene coming up that the game sort of like wants you to watch, but we're gonna skip it anyway.
Yeah, I didn't do a very good job trying to force you to do it. But by skipping the cutscene, basically, like, when you get the key, it changes the save point to right in front of the key chest, and then after you watch the cutscene, it sets it back to the beginning of the dungeon. But by skipping it, it never sets the save point back to the start, and so when you save warp, you'll kind of just be right back in front of the key chest, which ends up saving time. Also, we don't have to watch the cutscene. Oh, there's that. And also, the bridge never breaks, because the cutscene has the boss of the dungeon break the bridge. So we just don't have to deal with that either. So another interesting to note is right after the spinner track, or like not the track, but the spinner switch, you'll see Audie like equip something over the spinner and then do a roll out of the way. That just saves a tiny bit of time, because there is a little bit of time right at the very end of the, like right as the bridge is about to hit the wall, that you can just cancel out of it and it'll still work. It'll still push the bridge to the very end, and so it just saves a tiny bit of time there.
So now I have a few more rooms to go through before we can get to the double claw shots. Although they're all pretty quick rooms if they're done properly.
Yeah, there's a lot of long jump attacks in these rooms. This room is also really cool in Wii because there are a bunch of keys that you can actually use to do long jump attacks with. Normally, in the Wii version, of course, you can't do the boomerang long jump attack glitch, but because they have the keys there, it works the same way. You can just get long jump attacks across the voids with the keys. Also, this strat with the two Lizalfos, or Dinalfos, I think they are, is just really fun. And so coming up in this next room, there is a bit of a weird jump that Audie's going to try doing, which basically skips the entire puzzle of the room. There are these fans that's kind of... I mean, it's a big fan puzzle, basically. But by some clever use of a bit of an out-of-place wall, or floor, I guess, you can actually just skip the whole puzzle, but it's a pretty precise... Well, it's not super precise.
If we jump off this ledge, then fly over to the right, we'd be able to grab another ledge to skip the puzzle. Unfortunately, Adi hit the wall a little too much, and so he didn't get up the speed necessary for the jump.
Yeah. And this room here with the big vertical drop is really fun, just because you can equip the iron boots and just drop down the whole way really fast, and then unequip them and you won't, there's like no repercussions to it. So yeah, you can just get down there really quickly.
It's coming up, Adi's going to be attempting to actually skip this mini-boss. Normally to get up to the double claw shot chest, you need to claw shot a target and then drop down to get to the chest. But you can actually claw shot that target even while the gate that blocks off the area is closed. So Adi's going to be trying to do that right here. It's a very precise shot, and it's not common to, or it's like it's pretty common to fail it. But he got it right there. That was really fast. That was really good.
I think you have 1 pixel to get it vertically.
Yeah.
And even horizontally. If you claw shot the target too far horizontally, you'll actually get crushed by the door, because you'll like land inside of it.
Yeah, so now after we have the double claw shots, the only way to get out of there is either save warp or death warp.
And so yeah, as you saw there, the save point was in front of that key chest. And also the cutscene trigger for the Argrok cutscene where he breaks the bridge is actually gone now, so the save warp point is actually permanently set in front of that key. But we don't really need to use it anymore. But we don't have to... Audie's not going to be trying to avoid it in any fancy ways.
It's actually faster to get back to the main room through the side over here instead of going through the main door, just because of it loads faster. And you don't have to go through the animation of opening the door and then running forward.
So right here, because he kind of skipped past the trigger of starting the fan at the start, we can actually just kind of go backwards through the second or the third, like the last little area of the dungeon here, and just get the boss key kind of early. And it's very nice because it skips some really annoying... Like, before that trick was found, there were some really, really annoying ones in the speedrun. But fortunately, those have been cut out. They were... You know, the rooms were... one of the rooms specifically, it was this big vertical climb, and right at the very start, it was like you had to be really fast because there was this mini-boss sort of thing that you avoided in the speedrun because it took too much time to kill, but it could knock you off. It was really annoying.
Yeah, so now we also skipped activating the other fan that turns these walls up here. And using a very precise long jump attack, we can actually skip past these walls. We can also use the claw shot to actually grab the top of them if they're still.
You have to claw shot like the very top of it, and you also have to be above it where you're claw shotting for you to grab onto the ledge.
Yeah.
So right at the start of this big vertical room, there are a couple Air Alphos. You don't need to fight them. They don't even attack you. they'll attack you if you stay on the ground, but if you're climbing up, they just don't even bother. And also, right towards the top of the room, there's this pretty precise skip you can do, kind of, where you need to be really quick. You need to claw shot off of something really quickly. So you're gonna go, or oh, I don't think Audie went for it unless I'm. Oh no, it's there. Okay, yeah, I forgot where it was.
That was close though.
Yeah, it was very close. But yeah, it's very precise, or relatively precise. You just need to be quick is the main thing. So now comes a bit of an annoying claw shot. You start in the boss room, actually underneath the boss room, basically, and you need to claw shot up to the top. You only need to do one claw shot, but it's a little bit risky because there is a chance that when you get onto the vines, you kind of don't actually, like, you can't climb up the vines. You're sort of just like hanging there on the wall, and you can't do anything but drop off. So, but yeah, it didn't happen to Audie, so that's nice.
Yeah, there's nothing we can really do for the first, like, few seconds of this fight. Just, like, run around breaking skulls. Admiring the scenery until Argarok flies back in.
Shoutouts to Cool Game. There's a chance, if you go and do a claw shot onto Argarok when he's on the ground, if you do it too early, it's possible to sort of claw shot onto him, but not actually activate attacking him, and so it actually soft locks the game.
Fino.
Yeah. Also, right earlier, right after the very first hit, Audie really quickly claw shotted onto one of the pillars there, and by doing that, by doing it fast enough, it sort of tricks Argarok into thinking that's, I guess, he's already flown around or something, and so it lets you claw shot right onto him again, and it saves actually a decent amount of time.
Because as we saw, the first time Argarok flew around was, like, really slow, so we don't want that to happen again.
So right after this cutscene finishes, Audie's going to do something that looks kind of stupid. He's going to run off the edge and void out. The reason that we do that, actually, is because it sort of resets Argarok's position, and because normally right after the first phase he's flying around again, but by doing that it sort of puts him back in the middle, and so it just makes the cycle go the phase go a little faster. So for this very first, for the second phase of the fight, the strat for every single time that we need to attack him, Audie's going to be doing the same sort of strat where basically he equips the iron boots and sort of falls down until a very certain point, and then claw shots onto the next one. That sort of tricks Argarok into thinking that you've fallen down, and then so he stops his breathing fire animation. But then you're still up there, and so he just kind of goes into his vulnerable state at that point, and so it just skips having to wait for his fire animation to end. So the third time that Audie does this is actually going to be a little bit different, because for the third phase, what Argarok does is he kind of starts blowing his fire, and then after a little bit he turns around 180 degrees and then starts blowing fire the other direction, sort of just to try to trick you. But just by changing the strat up a little bit, it's possible to do the exact same strat. So just like that, Argarok is dead, and that saves a lot of time over not using any of those speed strats. That was a very good fight.
Yeah, so once again, City in the Sky is the only dungeon that we need to get the mirror shard from to actually get into the Palace of Twilight, because the game only checks for the City in the Sky mirror shard to see if the mirror is complete or not. Get the heart container for marathon safety.
Yeah, the Palace of Twilight has a lot of luck, and you can get hurt in a lot of different places just if you get bad luck or if you do things wrong. So it's pretty safe to, or it's pretty good to get a bunch of hearts just for safety.
I don't think anyone skips this heart container. Like, 4 hearts is a really naughty. I don't think anyone does that. I know Record doesn't it for sure, so...
Oh, I noticed you even skipped the Arbiters one.
I do skip Arbiters, yeah. So, like, if you would go for 4 hearts, you're really nuts, because you will probably see that I'm gonna be at like 1.5 or like at 1 heart in this dungeon, which would be equal to 1 death. So...
Also, one thing to note that we didn't mention earlier, right after City in the Sky, Adi equipped the Iron Boots right before he got into the cannon. And by doing that, normally right after you fall out of the cannon, like when you're falling into Lake Hylia, you kind of have this set arc that you take, and it lands you in the water. But by having Iron Boots on that, it sort of, it doesn't really change the arc, it just sort of doesn't move you quite as far. And then by doing a jump attack, it actually lands us on top of the bridge, and the Iron Boots helps with that. So it just kind of saves time. We don't have to actually swim over to land to warp away. Anyway, so here is Palace of Twilight, and this is probably the most annoying dungeon in the speed. There are just so many variables, so many things that can go wrong, and it's hard to do, and it's actually one of the longer dungeons as well. There aren't really any skips or any major skips in this dungeon, so it's a bit of a fun one. Yeah, you'll see a lot of those Zant heads throughout the whole dungeon. And the fastest way to kill them really is what Audie just did earlier, by doing a B attack into them at a certain time, which will get 2 hits on them, and then doing a mid charge attack, and that'll kill them right away. Normally, if you do enough attacks on them, they'll sort of warp away, but by doing it that way, they don't have time to warp away.
Yeah, so the basic objective of each room is just to get a small key so you can continue on, because every room essentially has a locked door. And the difficulty of each room increases as you go. So like in these first few rooms, we only have to fight 1 Zant head, but when we get to the next wing, there are going to be more Zant heads that we have to fight.
And the point of going through the east and the west wing of the dungeon is because we need to get what's called a sol. It's just this ball of light from each half, and we need to bring it to the center, and that will let us get the sort of powered up Master Sword, which we'll be using to break the barrier that formed around Hyrule Castle.
Gotta ask you guys to be quiet for just a sec, because I need to hear Phantom Zant spawning, but in like 20 seconds I'll give you a go again. Alright, sorry for
No worries.
cutting you off.
So yeah, there are two Phantom Zant fights in this dungeon, and basically this, if you remember a while back, I actually mentioned that most bosses or mini-bosses, they sort of won't finish their phase until you do a combo finisher on them, which Audie never did a combo finisher, so he never sort of went to his next phase where he just kind of warps around a lot. And so basically, by doing enough damage to him, it only takes 3 cycles, which the best way to do that is just do a normal stab, not a roll stab, and then do 2 quick spins, and then 3 quick spins on the last one, and it will take him down really quickly.
Yeah, and the reason that he asked for us to not talk is because you can actually use the audio to know where Phantom Zant is spawning.
Yeah, because it uses stereo audio, so if you hear it come out of the right side, then he'll be somewhere to the right, and vice versa for the left side. So another technique you might see him using is called, I believe we call it L sliding, where basically it doesn't really save much time, but whenever you use a claw shot and then you hold a direction and then press the lock on button, Link will start moving at a slow speed in whatever direction you are holding. And you can just use that to save little bits of time when you have to wait for the claw shot to actually work. And it's really only useful in this dungeon.
So now we got 1 soul. We have to go and get just 1 more. We can use the Gale Boomerang right here to do a long jump attack instead of taking the platform. Just a few seconds.
Yeah, this is one of the easiest LJs in the game. So this half of the dungeon, or the East Wing, is extremely annoying. This is where the rooms just get a lot. They're a lot harder. Like for instance, right here, you have to kill the Zant head while you're on moving platforms, and it's really easy to fall off, and falling off wastes a bunch of time.
If you're not careful, you'll fall off the platforms and have to go all the way back up again. And that wastes a lot of time because it automatically turns you into Wolf, and you have to claw shot back up at the beginning.
Right there, he used the boomerang just to sort of, I guess, reset the Shadow Beast's positions or animations. Because normally, like, as soon as you go near them, they'll sort of stop and do their swinging animation, but by canceling that, they run towards you again, and so that just saves the time of having to wait for them. So coming up, he's got 1 more Phantom Zant fight, so we'll be quiet for that as well. All right, that was very good. Both of the fights went very well.
Yeah, so by claw-shotting the Sol from a ways away, you actually skip a bunch of meta text that would usually be associated with, like, getting close up to the Sol and then grabbing it.
Ooh, this is bad.
Oh, he's got it.
Yeah, so the whole gimmick of this part of the dungeon is that these the wall masters will come and they'll try and take the Sol back to the back room there where they normally had it. So if you take too long, they will grab it, but the strats are usually pretty safe, so there's no reason. And actually, in this room right here, it's actually impossible for the wall master to find it while the platforms are up. So it's that one's really nice. Plus, the room is very quick. Casually, it was a lot more annoying. Speedrun Road has it. And with that, the first half of of Palace of Twilight is done, and that's really the annoying part over. The second half has some tricky stuff, but at least in my opinion, it's not anywhere as bad as the first half.
Yeah, so right here it's faster to drop the Sol and then roll over to the platform so you get to it quicker. Because then you can just claw shot the Sol.
It saves like 1 or 2 seconds. And with that, we get the fabled Butter Sword. If anyone calls it anything different, they're wrong.
Please don't call it like that.
So now that we have the light sword, is what it's actually called, we're able to actually deal with the sort of shadow clocks that are on the ground that turn you into wolf. Just by slashing, they kind of move out of the way. So that's sort of the mechanic that's used for some of the parts in the second half of the dungeon.
Yeah, the sword now will also one-hit shadow beasts and Xant heads. This is very convenient.
There are also a bunch of LJAs that Audie's going to be doing here that are kind of risky. They're consistent if you can, if you know what you're doing, but they are a little bit risky sometimes. So this is the room with the boss key in it, and we do have to get it, but it's a little bit faster to wait to get it and get it after. Basically, the gimmick of this room is that there's one Zant head on over on this platform, and then after you kill that one, a bunch more spawn in the middle, and it's just a little bit faster to get the boss key after you kill the first Zant head here, just because the way that they spawn it lines up a little better. And it was faster to just void out after killing the first Zant head than to actually take the platform back.
Yeah, so using a quick swim, you can just barely see enough where the smash on target is. You don't have to get rid of the like black fog, but it makes it much easier.
Oh.
No. Oh, at least getting hit there prevented you from turning into wolf. Alright, so this room that Audie's in right now has a cycle that he needs to catch at the top. There's this platform that's just moving back and forth, and it's on a universal timer from as soon as you enter the room. And just by going fast enough, he can catch a cycle. If he misses it, he'll have to wait, but it's pretty consistent to get it. Okay, at the very start, you can also, if you pull up Midna, it sort of stops the platform from moving, but it keeps the Shadow Beasts loading. And it just makes it a lot easier to hit the cycle. You don't need to do it, but it makes it easier. But Audie didn't go for it.
It'll have enough time to make this cycle. Looks like it should be good.
Ooh, just barely.
With the jump attack.
Yeah. So fortunately in the next room, there are a lot of hearts that usually spawn. There's a bunch of Shadow Beasts that you have to fight, and they have a chance of dropping hearts, and it's a good way to heal yourself up before the Zant fight.
Starts dropping progressively more and more Shadow Beasts on you.
They always spawn in the same spot, so it's easy to tell where they're going to land. It's also kind of interesting because you can use your whatever console you're using actually to tell when they're going to land, just because the console is going to start making a bit of a clicking sound whenever they load, and whenever that happens, you know that they're going to drop after like a second or two. So that's the audio cue I use. It's not even from the game.
And unfortunately, Audie wasn't able to get much health.
Yeah, that was fine. Ooh, yeah, that was not very good for health. So the Zant fight is one of the cooler fights in my opinion. It sort of has a bunch of phases from different mini-bosses and bosses from earlier on in the game. Like different phases like that, and all of them are pretty cool, especially in the speedrun. Well, I guess The first one, super. Yeah, but the rest are pretty cool. This is actually a really good time to mention that, like, so Zant is a really weird boss in the way that his health works. So basically, he's kind of got a combination of health and how many combo finishers you do on him. So the goal isn't to hit him as much as possible. It's to do however many combo finishers you need. So usually it's 2 combo finishers. Now, during the Goron Mines cycle, or phase, he's going to try doing a 1 cycle. Okay, yeah, that worked. So yeah, by doing the 1 cycle, it skips him from jumping around a bunch again, and it saves quite a bit of time. And then right after that, we've got the Morpheal section, which, of course, this is the reason that we still needed, or this is the main reason why we still needed bombs. So yeah. Because, of course, we still don't have the water tunic, so we'll still need to use the swimming with bombs glitch to refill our air. This is also a good time to mention that the fastest combo that you can do isn't actually just mashing B. There's actually, this game has like different attacks you can do based on what direction you're holding on the control stick. And so the fastest combo that you can do is, I think, left, right, forward, backwards when pressing B. Or it might be left, right instead of right, left. But yeah, it's actually so fast that sometimes it's too fast and you miss attacks on some bosses. On this phase, it never missed though.
Yeah, obviously Link's slash is much slower when he's underwater.
So that part right there is really the last sort of scary part of the run, because if you run out of bombs there, it's basically run over. If you can't kill him in time. So, of course, Audie had enough bombs that he didn't really think about that. And so this phase right here is the only reason that we actually needed the ball and chain. If we could find a way to damage him outside of using the ball and chain, then that would save a ton of time, because we just wouldn't have to go and grab the ball and chain. Unfortunately, we still do.
Yeah, just standing near the wall during this fight, Zant can't really hit you if you're right next to the wall because he can't get that close. Just
this last
this foot is easy.
This last phase, the only thing you need to do is do combo finishers. So Audie's gonna hopefully do this sort of setup type thing to make sure only combo finishers hit, and it'll go by really fast.
You need to do a total of 3 combo finishers.
That was a very good Zant fight.
As a side note, this very last fight actually killed a sub 3 run I had 2 days ago. So, we good.
Yeah, so now all that we have left to do is go through Hyrule Castle, final dungeon of the game.
So there's one more mailman skip that we have to do right before the end of the run. Right in front of Castletown, on the bridge entering it, there's a mailman trigger, and so he's just going to be skipping it the same method as he skipped it earlier on in the run, where he's just going to do a long jump attack past the trigger. And also, now would be a good time to say get ready, guys, because we have a pretty long cutscene coming up. It's like 2.5 or 3 minutes, probably like 2.5, with absolutely no inputs, nothing interesting happening, so you gotta go to the bathroom, now's the time to do it. or whenever the cutscene starts. You missed the ball.
I missed it, yeah.
So yeah, currently there's no way of getting past the barrier leading into Hyrule Castle, or just getting into Hyrule Castle early in any capacity.
Moonjump percent.
Oh, well, excuse me.
Come on, it's clearly the most legit category.
You can get in there with Moonjump.
And technically, it's not actually feasibly possible, but there you can also get through the barrier with a rupee slide, which actually we never really explained what that was. Whenever you are holding a rupee, like the rupee text, you're actually moving a little bit, and Link's model doesn't really check for collisions when that's happening, so you can just move right through walls with that. And that would work with the barrier in theory, but there's nothing in this room that has the barrier in it that you can really do an item or a rupee slide off of. So unfortunately, there's no actual feasible way of skipping the barrier.
Yeah, you can do map glitch to get like out of bounds past the loading zone and then like go around through the side, but there's like this part of the wall that's like sticking out too far that you can't get around. Yeah, so here we go with Hyrule Castle. Generally, the first part of Hyrule Castle is a bunch of these fights where the game will spawn a barrier around you and expect you to fight a bunch of enemies. For this fight, we can just stand still and do nothing.
It's the best strat in the game.
Yeah, the palm will just take care of the Koblins.
Coming up in the room after, there's the barrier skip. This is barrier skip in this game. Basically, yeah, the barrier actually takes a little bit of time to form around you if you skip the cutscene fast enough, so you just have time to kind of like run out of the way. And you can just skip the whole fight with all of those red Bokoblins, which those fights, like red Bokoblins, actually take quite a while to kill if you don't have bombs or something like that.
So now we come to the final King Boblin fight. You can't do quite all the damage we want to do before he has to swing his axe, so we move out of the way for a little bit.
And right after, there's one frame where you can do a backflip or a side hop or something, and then save warp, and that skips a mid text. I think if you get it, it saves, what was it, 4 seconds?
It's 5, yeah.
5, okay.
Depends on how fast your Wii loads.
Yeah. Gotta get that fast Wii.
And thankfully you can just squeeze past between the collision of the barrier and the fence right there on the way back.
And right as soon as Audie enters the main area of Hyrule Castle, probably happened already, there's another barrier skip that's he can do, where if he jump attacks into basically the trigger for it and then skips it while he's falling down, he can... The cutscene, like, it doesn't move him into the barrier quite enough, and so he can just walk around it. And that one actually saves a lot of time because not only does it save the fight that happens, but also as soon as you finish the fight, the lights in the room turn on, and that makes this room quite laggy. So fortunately, there's a way to skip that. Also, here's... I mean, you go ahead.
Yeah, okay, so this is the one Dark Knight we fight and run. It's fastest to just slash his shield and get behind him. And then using the ball and chain, we can finish him off really quickly in the second phase. And so there are two paths you can use to go through this next part of Hyrule Castle. One path requires the bow, but thankfully the other path only requires the lantern. Because we never get the bow in this run since we completely skipped the Goron Mines.
Bit of a shame. Goron Mines is my favorite dungeon. And in a speedrun setting, it's actually a really cool dungeon. Yeah, it's just not at all fast to go there. So these Dynalphos, they take one hit with a bomb and then they're dead, so it's the fastest to just pull out a bomb and blow them up that way, rather than trying to actually attack them. And here we've got the first Eralphos fight that we actually have to do. It's fastest to throw the boomerang first, because that makes him put his shield up, and then that lets us attack him right away, or claw shot him right away and bring him down to the ground where we can attack him.
So now we have a small key, and the door that this small key unlocks is actually just up here on the right, but we're not going to quite go there yet, because we still need to get the boss key for this dungeon.
This is actually one part that a long time ago they thought was faster as Wolf, but then timings were done and it was discovered that human rolling is actually faster.
So thankfully these people that we've never met are here to help us.
No, we met Oru, and that's it. Don't know who the rest of them are.
And we'll never see them again.
So this first room, once you enter the inner part, you're actually normally supposed to transform into Wolf and follow this sort of maze across these platforms, because there are these falling platforms, but you can, as human, just kind of roll past them and they don't fall down in time, and so you can just kind of skip that whole little puzzle.
use a precise shot to skip having to go through one of the like torches. Well, that was good right there. He was able to get both of the jump slash quick spin.
Right here is something that wasn't found for a very long time. You can actually just claw shot right past this last Dark Nut and skip fighting him entirely.
Yeah, somehow that managed to go unfound until like 2016.
Yeah.
When someone who was doing, I think it was DF, was like doing a glitch this run and was able to figure out that you could just claw shot the torch behind there.
Now we're entering the final boss fight, so the run will be over right after this is finished. The very first phase is definitely the most annoying phase, because it's Puppet Zelda, and this is literally just an RNG fest. Basically, Zelda has 3 different attacks that she can do. The energy ball that Audie got right here is what you want. That lets you hit her with it. She can also do a dashed attack, and then a Triforce attack where she puts this like light Triforce on the ground and it hurts you. You don't want the Triforce attack, which unfortunately Audie got one right here, but it just wastes a little bit more time to have that, and it lags the game some more.
Yeah, there's not much really to do unless Zelda summons an energy ball, so usually people like to redecorate the room.
And so far, this has been good luck. The fastest cycle that you can get is 7 cycle, where basically she can't do the same attack. She can't do the energy ball twice in a row. Actually, the fastest that she can do it is energy ball first on the first, third, and 7th attacks. That's the best luck that you can get. A lot of triangles here.
So if he gets an energy ball here, cycle-wise, this will be a perfect fight. So nice.
Yes, so that was perfect luck, at least for the cycle count.
It could have been a little bit shorter if Zelda decided to do like the dive attack instead of all the Triforce attacks. But that's still very good luck compared to what most people usually get.
So then the Beast Ganon fight is a pretty interesting fight. It used to be pretty random, but now it's 100% consistent. Basically, what we do is we do enough damage on him to, we do basically as much damage as we possibly can before finishing off the cycle, or the attack cycle. And what that does is if we do that twice, then it will put Beast Ganon into a separate, cycle that happens where basically he only ever spawns one portal that he can run out of, and he runs out of it immediately, so that saves some time here. Yeah, and the third time you can't actually knock Beast Ganon down with the ball and chain. You have to be Wolf. Yeah, as you can see, he only comes out of one portal, or only one portal will appear, and he'll come out of it pretty quickly.
Yeah, and then because there's so much damage dealt to him, it just takes one big attack as a wolf to finish him off.
Yeah. So the next phase is the horseback Ganondorf phase. Now this phase is also pretty annoying. Basically, the whole point is you have Zelda on your horse now, and she's shooting light arrows at Ganondorf, and you need the light arrows to hit. And sometimes Ganondorf just doesn't play along. Sometimes he'll just kind of do a 180 right by you.
Yeah, sometimes the way in which Ganondorf moves can be a little cool.
So once you get behind him, it's pretty...
Yeah. Cheska? Oh well. Time's coming up soon. Yeah, but what do I say? Okay. Okay.
So a fun thing about this final fight is that in the German version, this only works in the German version, that text that appears when Ganondorf's kind of walking towards you, it advances, on the German version it doesn't advance automatically, and so you can kind of just keep it going into the fight, and you'll be walking around with the text box active. It doesn't work on the other versions though.
Yeah, this fight is like insanely easy. It's kind of a joke. Just 3 jump slash quick spins, iron boots, and time. And so that is Twilight Princess Any Percent by Adi.
And the Iron Boots finishing. Nice. Yeah,
The
my
meme. Alright.
Good
Glad
stuff,
this run.
Adi.
Yeah, 3:02 is a really nice time. For a marathon, that is. Obviously, this is 2 minutes behind my PB, but considering I missed a trick that saves a minute.
Yeah, well, that was a very good run.
And with this, we end our first run of the marathon already. 3:02:12. Actually, Audi, you know, that's a really good marathon time. Well below estimate. Thank you guys. I had a blast watching the game I grew up as a speedrunner with. Yeah, any last shoutouts from you guys?
Shoutouts to the whole TP community. Really glad that many more people are actually getting back to it. Like there's a lot of people actually, the more I watch my following list, the more people are actually getting to it, so it's really cool, because it had its small downtime. Shoutouts to Adam, of course, for being beast at this game. Shoutouts at others, Skyrion, for example, Sapphire, yeah. Brawler, of course, all those.
Alright. Thank you, Kejsmaster, thank you, Horn, and thank you, Gymnast. We will go into a quick break, go to our break screen, and then we will be back in like 5 minutes with more Zelda. Coming up is Link's Awakening, 100% RBO 3 Hard Challenge by Mayo Mike. See you then.